The second my husband's mistress started laughing at me over the phone, that was the moment something inside me snapped. I had never in my life seen red before that conversation, but hearing her mock me while I was still trying to process the betrayal. I knew my marriage was over. Let me start from the beginning. My husband and I had been together for 6 years. 3 years dating, 3 years married. I was 26, he was 30. And up until 3 days before everything fell apart, I genuinely believed we were solid. I trusted him completely. He had never given me a reason not to. So we're sitting at dinner one night, just a normal evening, and he casually brings up that a longtime friend of his wants to have a baby. I didn't know this woman personally, but he had mentioned her before over the years. Apparently, she had asked him to be the sperm donor, and he told me he was very flattered and that he wanted to do it. At first, I was really surprised, but I wasn't necessarily upset. The idea didn't sit great with me, but I didn't want to jump to the wrong conclusions. So I told him to explain a little more about what this would actually mean. He told me she had wanted a kid for a while and had decided she wasn't going to wait around for a relationship anymore. I asked him a reasonable question. I said, wouldn't it be difficult for you to know that somewhere out there you had a child you couldn't see? A child whose life you couldn't be a part of? Wouldn't that affect you emotionally? And that's when he dropped the real bomb on me. This woman didn't just want a sperm donor. She wanted him to actually be the father figure. She wanted him to be a part of the kid's life, like the actual dad. My stomach dropped. Because here's the thing he conveniently glossed over, he had been intimate with this woman before. They dated in their early 20s. He always referred to her as just a friend, and before this moment, I had never minded their friendship. I assumed whatever romantic feelings they had were long gone. And maybe they were, but isn't it incredibly intimate to share the active parenting of a child with someone? I couldn't wrap my head around how they would keep things platonic, considering their history and this massive bond-building experience they were planning together. When I expressed my discomfort, he immediately got defensive. He told me I was overreacting. He said I wasn't showing trust in him, that I was being insecure, and that it was insulting because he had always been loyal to me. He had never cheated, never given me any reason to doubt him, and that was true. But something about this whole situation just felt deeply, deeply wrong. And then, there was another layer to all of this that made everything so much worse. He and I had talked about having children before. Early in our relationship, right when things started getting serious, I told him about some fertility issues I had. I was honest with him. I explained that I had never gotten a specialist's opinion, that nothing was certain, but that I had been told it might be a concern down the road. It wasn't something that consumed my mind at the time because we had both agreed to put off planning a family for a few years. To me, it was a distant issue. Something I figured we would deal with together when the time came. But apparently, he had been thinking about it a lot more than I realized. Because then he tells me, he and this woman had already been discussing this arrangement for days. Days. Behind my back. And he said he was going to do it because I might not be able to have his kids anyway. He said if it turned out I couldn't give him children, he wanted to seize this opportunity now because he might not get another one like it later. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. My emotional reaction was immediate. I felt inadequate. Like I had already been written off. We hadn't even started trying for kids yet. I hadn't even seen a specialist. And he had already made up his mind that I was a lost cause and moved on to his backup plan, with another woman. I was hurt. I was shocked. I was so upset I could barely form coherent thoughts. But deep down, this little voice in my head kept whispering, what if he's right? What if I really can't have kids? Would it be fair of me to deny him the chance to be a father? Was I looking at this the wrong way? He had always been faithful. Could this somehow work in a way I just wasn't seeing? But I couldn't picture it. No matter how hard I tried, I could not picture a future where this arrangement didn't destroy us. We got into an argument. A big one. He told me I was being selfish because he had always wanted children and I couldn't expect him to give up such a huge dream of his. He insisted he wasn't cheating with this woman. He said they weren't going to have sex. He claimed it would be like he just had a kid he could father, and the kid would simply live with a friend. He said it really had nothing to do with our relationship, that it was his own personal matter and I wouldn't have to do anything. I think that's genuinely how he saw it in his mind. Like when one person in a marriage has a time-consuming, expensive hobby that the other doesn't enjoy but still allows their partner to pursue even though it means giving up time and resources. But this wasn't a hobby. This was a child, a living, breathing human being. And this wasn't just some random woman. This was someone he had dated and slept with, even if it was years ago. A child would be a massive part of his life that I apparently would have no part in. He would share holidays with this woman. Weekends. Milestones. He would be financially tied to her. Emotionally tied to her. They would be building a family together, just not with me. I didn't know what to do. I had never been in this position before. I didn't know if I was overreacting. I didn't know if people commonly did things like this. I didn't know if there was some version of this that actually worked out. All I knew was that something felt horribly wrong, and I couldn't shake it. So I decided to do the one thing that terrified me the most. I called her. Behind his back, I found this woman's number and I called her directly. And what I found out, confirmed every fear I had and then some. Everyone who had told me something was off, they were right. He was cheating on me. The whole thing, the sperm donor story, the co-parenting arrangement, all of it, it was a cover. He had been sleeping with her. And the conversation with this woman, it wasn't civil. She wasn't kind about it. She wasn't apologetic. It was probably the worst conversation of my entire life. She was completely in my face about it. And when she started laughing at me, actually laughing at me while I sat there with my world crumbling around me, I saw red for the first time in my life. She wasn't even pregnant, by the way. But apparently that wasn't for lack of trying. They had been actively trying to conceive behind my back while he sat across from me at dinner, looked me in the eyes, and told me this was just about helping a friend. We dated for 3 years. We were married for 3 years. 6 years of my life with this man, and I had no idea. Looking back at how I sat there at that dinner table, actually questioning whether I was being too insecure, actually wondering if I was the selfish one, it makes me cringe. How naive could I possibly have been? But I know the answer to that. When you love someone, you're wired to see the best in them. Your mind desperately wants to believe that the person you chose is fundamentally good, so you find ways to excuse behavior that would seem obvious to anyone on the outside. That's why I didn't see it. That's why none of us ever see it until it's too late. But I saw it now. And I was done. I got out. The divorce was happening. Whatever he and that woman had, they could have each other. I was finished.